Alright, this is my solution, or this is my attempt to a solution. I haven't quite figured it completely out. It's the binary up-down counter using 2 buttons and just state machine programming. The just state machine programming part's the only part I'm having problems with. Namely that I'm having issues with the ISR. I can't seem to get it to empty unless I pull from it. So that's my only challenge, but I've got it to work mainly just using state machine code. So here it is in action. Like I can just increase, it helps to start the program first. Alright, I can increase by pressing a button. It goes really fast, so hey, we've got some bouncing issues here a little bit too, but you can see that it does actually work. I didn't build any debouncing into these button presses, so sometimes it's kind of snapping forward like that. And then the decrease also works. But I mean, here you can just see it happen really quickly there. Alright, so I've got it working. And I'm pretty happy with my solution. It's really bouncing on this button press pretty hard. And so my issue is mainly with just the ISR. And so let me just look at my code here. So my code, the way it works is I'm mainly using the state machine program. This is my only code out here. The only thing I'm trying to do is I'm not putting anything into it except for my signal from my buttons. But I'm doing that in the state machine. Here I'm just using the get function so I can clear out the ISR, or rather that's clearing out one of the FIFOs. But I found that my method was like jamming up the ISR, and the ISR was not working properly. I wasn't able to clear it. So, and if you look at my code, I have it streaming here down what's in when my buttons get pressed and what's inside of the ISR. And I noticed that there was like every time I pressed a button, there was a stream of zeros afterward that got pulled out because it's like a queue, I guess. There's, as you said, there's like 4 spots and they get pushed in and pushed out. And so I didn't know how to get ISR to be empty without it clearing, and I didn't know how to read pins without just sticking them into the ISR. And so I looked into the wait command, but the wait command seems to only let you wait for 1 pin. Maybe there's just a trick to that, I don't know. But the way this works is I've got my wrap target up there, so this is the main loop. Y is the value I'm going to be pushing into the pins, so I started at 0 so I can decrease it and increase it from there. And so I use this in function, which I read about on the documentation page, which is paired with this in base function in our state machine, or parameter, not function. And so what I do is what I noticed is I was playing around with that, and you can see down there, that's what I've got posted down there. When I press the buttons that are coincide with that, the ISR gets a 1 or a 2. So that's what I'm using here to determine which thing to do, either to increase or to decrease. So I move from the ISR into an X variable. Well, it's not a variable, into the X register. And then I just start testing the X register. I know with the jump command, we have a couple ways to determine whether to jump or not. And so the first one I looked at was just called not X, and this just simply checks to see if it's empty. And so my thought process is that if since I'm constantly reading on these 2 pins, if I'm reading a 0, I'm just gonna keep looping. So that's J1. Jump 1 takes me here, and then jump 1 immediately just goes to jump wrap. You know what? That's a little redundant. I probably can change that. I'll fix that for next time. So if it's not 0, what we do is I do the X decrement jump. So I take 1 away from whatever X is, because remember at this point X is either a 1 or a 2, and then I check again. If it's 0 at that point, that means it was a 1, which means, okay, let's go ahead and increase it. And if it was still a number, that means it was the 2, which became a 1, and I'm going to decrease it again so that I can jump to the decrease function. I'm also kind of realizing maybe I don't actually need to decrease it, because I'm kind of done with x at that point. And so to increase and decrease, I kind of took this similar ideas from the lesson 90, I think it was, just to figure out how to increase it. If you realize through the video, decreasing is actually really easy because we could just keep using that decrease function. So I'll go over that one first. I jump to decrease. I take my y variable and I just jump immediately to a label below it while decrementing it, and then I move it into my pins. After that, I have to jump to the wrap. These are mainly sure to make sure I actually end up going back to the wrap and not somehow... I found for some reason it doesn't like having multiple wraps in a function. I'm not sure if that's quite true or not. Maybe I need to test a little bit more. But when I was trying to end these with just another wrap code, but for some reason it was not working properly. It was still going through like the entire thing while ignoring my multiple just wrap statements. So I've got my one wrap statement here, and that's why I'm jumping down to it in each of these programs, or each of these little sections. The increase one took a little bit of trickiness to solve. So what I do is if I want to increase it, what I do is I first invert y, then I decrease it, immediately go to there, and then I invert it again, and that actually just adds 1 to whatever y was before. And then I just move it into the pins, and then I jump to wrap, and we start the whole process over again. So my main issue is I cannot seem to do this. So if you notice at the end of my program here, I have push. I'm not really doing anything with the data. I'm just trying to... I've tried everything to clear the ISR. My ISR is just it's collecting a bunch of numbers because it's constantly reading from the 2 end pins, and it's like filling up with zeros whenever it's not, whenever I'm not pressed a button. So the only way I've found it to clear it is to use the push function. I've tried other things. Like I've tried something as simple as just like I've tried move ISR null, like move null in the ISR to see if that would clear it out, or even just to make it empty, or even reset its value each time, or even to turn x into 0 and then copy x into the ISR. It just wasn't working. Like ISR was staying filled with stuff as far as I could tell, and that the only way I could get it to really clear is to push. So I know you wanted us to accomplish this without using push or get. That's the part I'm stuck on. I don't know how to not do that, because that's the only way I can figure out how to get ISR to be empty. I don't know if there's a different way to read in the pins. This would all be easier if I could just have a wait signal. Then I wouldn't have to worry about it constantly pulling in zeros. But as far as I could tell, the wait command could only wait for 1 pin. So I wasn't quite sure how to make it wait for the 2 different buttons. So that's where I'm at. So problem almost solved. I just need to figure out how to get past this get and this push. Once I do that, everything would be entirely in State Machine.